Well, Thanksgiving is behind us and Christmas looms in the future. So let's get started with some holiday gardening and seasonal decorating. I want you guys to do it along with me. You know, I plant tulips, I plant daffodils, I plant alliums, but probably the most dramatic thing I plant, and maybe for you too, are amaryllis bulbs. They're absolutely glorious, dramatic, magnificent. There is no superlative, I don't think, that does not apply to amaryllis. So let's plant some up. I do it every year, so I may give you a glimpse in this show of some of them that I have planted and kind of composed in the past, and some of the unique ways that you too can style them for your holiday decorating. Now let's get started. Well, it wouldn't be the holidays if I didn't pot up some amaryllis bulbs, and I am doing that today with some fabulous Color Blends Magnum bulbs, and these are huge. They're absolutely gorgeous, and this is one of those cases, as you guys probably know, that size matters, and you want to get the biggest amaryllis bulb you can if you want to get real drama from it. So that's one of the reasons I like to get them from Color Blends. Now, for me, amaryllis are all about drama, and typically I like to plant them in multiples, though sometimes I plant them singularly in each pot. But I have this fabulous brass urn, metal urn, that my friend Nev gave me, and very happily, serendipitously, I also have all sorts of these plastic pots that fit in here perfectly. The top of the pot is flush with the top of the urn. So I just potted up a bunch of tulip bulbs that I'm going to be forcing for next spring to put in this same urn in some of these same pots. But for now, I am going to press this urn into service with amaryllis. So I've started potting up two of them in one of these plastic pots. And by the time they bloom, this is going to be just beyond spectacular. Now, probably you guys already know how to pot up amaryllis. First of all, you just really want to get a good quality bulb, and I have absolutely done that. And you can, guys, you can get these, by the way, I think at Color Blends, they still have some available and they're 20% off. You guys might want to check out their site. But I will get them from just about anywhere, whether it's retail or online, as long as they're good quality and in the colors that I want. Now, this mangum is in a deep red, but I have some other varieties in a really gorgeous pink called Lagoon that I'm going to show you a little bit later. Now, one thing when I select bulbs that I always try to do is find one, this is kind of a cheat, try to find one that looks like it's already got a stalk that's beginning to erupt out of the bulb itself. And this one in particular has a stalk. You can just see the tip of it, and it's starting to project its little head out of the top of the bulb. Now, ideally, I thought I would probably put 3 in this pot, but these bulbs are so large that I'm only going to be able to get 2. And though 3 is typically my number, I think 2 is still going to give me a fabulous display and probably an odd number of stalks, because these are going to, in all likelihood, put out multiple stalks. So I have put in, probably 5 to 6 inches of potting soil. This is just a good potting soil blend. And I think this is Stay Green. Since I'm doing this inside, in front of the fireplace, I've got my bag in another tote bag so I don't get dirt all over the place. And then I'm just going to top this off a little bit, but not with too much, because I don't want too much of the shoulders of these bulbs, and that's what they're called, is the shoulders of these bulbs, to be buried. At least a third, sometimes even a half, of the bulb to be exposed. And you guys have probably seen them where they jump the gun and they're already blooming, even in the crate or in the package that you sometimes see them in the store. You can also even grow these in water, though I find them most beautiful when planted in a garden-like fashion in a pot. Now, I'm going to top dress this in a different way a little bit later, and I'll show you some of my favorite top dressings. But one thing that I typically do like to do, and that is put my supports in for those big stalks sooner rather than later. Now, I use all different kinds of things. Sometimes I will use bamboo stakes and I can put them in kind of a tripod fashion. Sometimes I will use really beautiful sticks or pieces of wood that I have foraged out from my garden or in the woods, preferably with a little bit of lichen on them or something, and with an interesting contour and interesting lines. So it can be something natural, it can be something not natural, like or kind of natural, like this bamboo. Stuart, I guess bamboo is natural, is it not? It is. And if you grow bamboo, you know you will have lots of bamboo stems. But you can also get something like this, and I got these off of Amazon last year, and you can put these in place and they will help support that heavy stalk and even some of the floppy leaves once they start coming up. Now you can put these on now, or you could put them on once the stalks start to come out of the bulb itself. And these I can put at 2 different heights to accommodate different heights of stems, different heights of leaves, or whatever. And remember, these are in short order going to be obscured by the foliage of not only the stalk and the leaves, but how I top dress them. Okay, now let's talk about really making them fabulous and especially celebratory for the holidays. Now the thing about amaryllis is they can be a little bit obstinate. You're never really sure when they're going to bloom if you're trying to time that specifically for the holidays, which is one of the reasons that I try to do that cheat and make sure that I've got a stem coming out when I select my bulbs. But a lot of that will depend on what variety you plant. So in my experience, the ones that are in the pink range, they tend to bloom earlier. In the red range, like Red Lion and some of the other classic bicolored ones, those bloom a little bit later and around Christmas. And then some of them, the ones that are white or tend to be kind of in coral apricot colors, to me, in my experience, yours may be different, and that's my question of the day. What has been your experience with the timing of your amaryllis? Most of mine bloom in white and coral, they'll bloom a lot later, sometimes even into the new year. Now, of course, if you save your bulbs, sometimes you will find that if you plant them up in big pots like I did last year. Stuart, do you remember when I did that? When I potted a bunch of them in some great big terracotta pots, and they bloomed outside in the spring in magnificent fashions. So I've got my amaryllis potted up in here, and now obviously, I want them to bloom as quickly as possible, and to do that, I want to expose them to some kind of heat. So for me, sometimes I'll kind of keep them in front of my fireplace, or I'll keep them in a pretty warm area. As soon as I see them doing anything at all, I will take them away from that heat, and then I'll put them in a bright location. I have discovered that as many different kinds of people as there are different ways that people try to grow their amaryllis. This is just my technique. You undoubtedly have yours. So once I get them potted up, I have watered them, and I'll keep an eye on them in a bright place. Now, I always typically like to dress them up in some fashion. I seldom ever just leave them in the pot like this with just the bare earth exposed. And for just a couple of different reasons, but one, because they are such a holiday plant, I really want to make sure that I maximize their beauty and their impact by adorning them in different kind of ways specific to either the season or the holiday itself. Now, I went outside this morning and I just clipped a whole bunch of things. Some nandina berries, nandina foliage, I've got some privet here, I've got some arbor vitae, and what this does is not only adorn your container, but it also can provide some additional support for the stalks when they come up. Now here is a little tip. I used to do this, for example, if I had this out and I was using it on a table and I wanted it to go ahead and look pretty even before it was in bloom, then I would zhuzh it up with some of these this foraged greenery and these foraged vines, or I would mulch it with pine cones or something. But now I find that I do that a little bit later. And why? It's because I don't want to do it twice. I want the greenery to stay fresh, because if I did it now, chances are in my dry indoor air, I would have to constantly kind of replenish it or replace it so that it continually looked fresh. Now I just wait until it looks like they're really coming into bloom before I do this additional layering and impact. So here's a couple of different ideas for you. Sometimes the most common things, Stuart, I'm going to make a big mess here. You don't care because I'll be cleaning it up. Oops. We've got foliage down. Foliage down, Stuart. Okay, so sometimes the most common things are the most fun. This is just common privet, and I am removing some of the bottom foliage. And remember, I'm going to wait to insert this probably, after they are at least 6 inches tall and they're really starting to already make themselves known. But I can take this privet, I can then use it almost as if I was using it in a cut flower arrangement, and I would split it up the stalk with just some secateurs or some scissors or something. And then I can put this in place, position it accordingly. I can put that in place. And because it's got a strong stem, that will not only be attractive, but it will also support the heavy stalk. I could put multiple stems of this privet in here, and I could have it look, I guess, kind of cohesive and all in the same language. But let's say that I wanted to use a different type of foliage. And by the way, once I put this privet in place, then I could do things like mulch it in tiny lady's apples or clementines or pine cones, and I would have both the greenery and the things, the top dressing, to really make it look fabulous. I could also tuck in some berries to give it a little jolt of color, or if I wanted a jolt of color, immediately I could do something like take a branch, a fairly straight branch. In this case, this is a clipping from my Foster holly out front. I'm going to treat it just the same. And I am going to slice it up so that it will have some kind of hydration and moisture uptake from the soil itself. And then I can put that in place. It almost looks like a small tree. And then when this red amaryllis blooms, it's going to be really, really fabulous. And then I can just torque this branch in one way or another according to the growth pattern of the amaryllis itself. Now, I can do that. I could then subsequently come in here and add some more greenery like this to do a skirt around the edge. Stuart, you and I have done this before for some, many times, and you can come in and whatever kind of greenery you have, whether it's arborvitae, whether it's a pine, whether it's yew, boxwood, whatever, you can come in and you could put a skirt around this and it would be beautiful. And if you wanted it to glisten, you could even put a few scattered silver ball ornaments or something like that in. But if I wanted it to be more low growing, then I could, instead of getting a vertical branch of holly, I could get something like this that was more horizontal, and I could use some of that gorgeous nandina. I could take out these supports, put this in place, and it would almost look as if this nandina, in fact, I'll just go ahead and do that. It would also almost look as if this nandina was growing out of the pot. And nandina, the nice thing about it is, even though, again, I'm not going to insert this until the amaryllis is tall, but I have found that nandina will stay fresh for a pretty long time, and even when it begins to dry, it's still beautiful. And then you've got those gorgeous pendulous berries that cascade over the side. Do you like that, Stuart?
I do.
And you can just add more according to your taste. And then if I wanted to do more layering, because I'm always about layering, then I could come in here and I could add some traditional conifer greenery if I wanted. And you would have an absolutely magnificent centerpiece for your dining room table, for your sideboard, for your entryway. And obviously, as Christmas approaches and I begin to decorate these, I will show you how I do it. But this kind of gives you some ideas of things that you can use from your own garden to top dress it. Now, if you want to be really traditional, and I think very, very elegant, I'll show you another option. Now, probably one of the most elegant and maybe the most traditional top dressings for your amaryllis, or really any of your holiday plants, is to just use preserved moss. Or it can be live moss if you've got an ethical place from which you can source it. I often save mine from one year to the next. One tip, you want to make sure you hydrate it first. Get it really, really wet, because not only will that make it fresher, will that make it fresher, but it also helps you put it in place and helps you mold it around the bulbs that much more easily. So I think this, for these, I'm going to just top dress some of these smaller pots in it. Now here's something else that's kind of fun, Stuart, and I remember doing this many, many years ago, and after I thought it up myself, I saw it in Martha Stewart magazine, so I felt validated. I felt validated. And that was, I took my pots of, and for this treatment, I typically use colors that look a little springier. So I'm going to do this around my pots that are planted in Lagoon, which I believe is that really deep pink. And that is to spread some ryegrass seed. This is a perennial ryegrass, and you just sprinkle it. I'm not going to do it because these are red, but you just sprinkle it across the surface. You don't even have to bury it. Just sprinkle it across the surface, kind of slough it in, and then keep it moist just with a mister or something, because you don't want to overwater the amaryllis bulb. Put it in a bright location in the sun and it will germinate. The seeds will germinate almost immediately, and then it looks like your amaryllis is growing out of a green, lush lawn. I have done that many, many times. Obviously, you could also use things like pine cones in their natural state, or spray painted. I have done that many times. You could use, if you were doing lots of pomanders, you could do all sorts of different clove-studded citrus, and you could mulch it with that. You could use acorns. You could use ornaments. You could use whatever you want. Give me some of your suggestions. I typically like to go a little bit au naturel, but start thinking about what you have in your own gardens right now, what you have available to you. Look for beauty everywhere, wherever you can find it, and really recognize its potential to dress up your gorgeous amaryllis and holiday plants for Christmas.